is Horror Sucks, the podcast where we watch horror movies and tell you why they suck. I'm Ashley Atkins.
And I'm Carter Rhodes, and Ashley threw me under the bus here. And this is another very special episode. This might be our 4th in a row, depending on when it comes out. But we are reviewing Coraline with, I know, with a longtime friend of the podcast and friend of us, Nika.
Hello.
Nika, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Nika. I use they, them pronouns, and I have been listening since the beginning, and I have been telling Carter to let me talk about Coraline also since the beginning.
This has been a long time planned, and I'm very excited for it.
Me too.
For starters, I have had the pleasure of buying this. I thought you might be interested in it.
For the listeners, Carter has passed me a medal that is written entirely in Russian that I'm currently trying to translate.
It was in Coraline. It's the Chernobyl Liquidators medal.
Yeah.
Mr. Babinski had it, and it is that medal. Like,
how did you find this?
A yard sale.
Stop.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, I have so many notes about Mr. Babinski, mostly because every time we watched it, I had to rewind and triple listen to what... I speak Russian fluently. My family is from the Soviet Union. I could not understand a goddamn word that man said.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought you guys would like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
The art on that, there's the alpha, beta, and gamma radiation waves going through a drop of blood. It's a very pretty medal.
Little terrifying.
A little,
when you think about it for too long.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So, Coraline.
So, before we get into it, for those of you who are new here, how this thing works is we watch a movie, and we talk about said movie, but we give the plot, we give some fun facts, we give our critique in the good, the bad, and the spooky, and then we wrap it up with impressions and a rating.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much it. Before we get started, I have to say for a long time I hated Coraline. But mainly because I have seen this movie about 30 times just when I was in high school, because the kid I babysat only wanted to watch Coraline, and her dad would come home and be like, "She's making you watch Coraline again?" And so I hated it. And then I watched it today, and I was like, oh, this actually is a really good movie. I get it.
You watched it today?
I forgot that I needed to rewatch it because I've seen it so many times.
Yeah,
and this morning I was like, oh, shoot, I gotta do that. And then you texted me that we were waiting till 11, and I was like, thank God.
Yeah.
But yeah. So now I'm in the Coraline appreciation pool.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So, before we get started, I do just want to say that we recently started our Savage World, which is basically off-brand Dungeons and Dragons pirate campaign, and my character, I might have mentioned it, is me, who was sent back in time to pirate era and now needs to find a way back. So my character arc is building a time machine. I'm
so mad at your character. So I planned this. Well, I didn't plan it. I got this great battle with like the big villain of the story, right? And I was like, all right, Carter opened the door. He's gonna attack Carter. He missed. He woofed it. Yeah. And then Carter's like, oh, I got max strength. I'm gonna grapple him. He restrained him for the entire fight. My guy couldn't do a dang thing.
I just had him in a headlock. And at a certain point, we were like, should we let him go? And I was like, I mean, he can't hurt anyone. It's just going to be slow. So we just held him and stabbed at him for a while.
Everyone just took turns, whether they hit or they didn't. It was so... I was mad.
This feels like in my D&D campaign with some of our other friends, we had a very early battle that was supposed to be very difficult. And then we did a really cool thing where we did not let the big bad evil guy get a turn. We simply restrained him and murdered him on the spot and then dragged his corpse away in front of his like companions who just looked at us in terror. And then we turned to our DM and said, "We're all still lawful good." And he just went, "No, you are not. You murdered a man in cold blood." And I'm like,
That's essentially what they did to my captain.
He was a ghost.
He was a zombie. It's fine. You were meant to kill him. It just was...
The best part, though, was, so I rolled to grapple him, and I beat him with a raise, which is in the Savage Worlds, that basically means you did so well you get a bonus, like you succeed and then some. So in this case, it was damage. I restrained him and he took a wound. So Ashley goes, okay, how do you restrain him? And I go, so I grab him, I stuff I stuff his head under my arm, and I just spank him as hard as I can.
I hate this.
Loud enough that everyone's ears are ringing.
So much.
And then the table was just quiet. And then Ashley goes, okay, everyone draw for initiative. It was easily one of our most successful games.
Considering it was our first, I hope it just goes up from there. Yeah. I did, however, last night get a pirate coin for us to use for luck.
Neat. That is cool looking.
I went on a date and we played skee ball. And first of all, I set the record on the skee ball machine. That was exciting. But then we were getting our prizes and we just got a bunch of Starbursts. And I was like, wait, I'm sorry. I got to give one of these back for that stupid thing.
So how was the date?
Oh, it was really good.
That's good.
He gave me the hot sauce.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyways, we went roller skating and I didn't fall. So
nice.
Super success.
You know how to roller skate, don't you?
I do, but I fall a lot.
Okay.
And this was also my first time roller skating inside, like in a rink. I usually just do it like outside at the school. So I was nervous, but it was very good.
Mm-hmm. Have you been on a fun dates lately, Nika?
I've been like hanging out with the same person for the last several months. But right now, what that mainly looks like, because we are both working adults, is, and I am also gone every single weekend, a problem that, oh well, mostly that just looks like I go over to their house, we eat Thai food, and then we watch 90s anime on the couch for 3 hours while their cat like does their best to get fully on top of the TV stand and block the view.
So sounds like a great
date. That sounds like a great date.
It is perfect. in true queer person fashion, that's just it. That's just been it for the last month. It's fantastic.
Yeah, my favorite 90s anime is Seinfeld.
Hate that.
So I've been charged with the plot, and unfortunately I didn't have time to type it out, so I'm going to be doing the time-tested write the plot in my head as I go. So,
you mean not the Wikipedia read?
Well, I printed it. I'm just not going to read it word for word.
You printed the Wikipedia?
Well, I'm not going to...
I've got the IMDb on my phone for the facts,
So, Jesus. You have no excuse. That's literally just copying and pasting. I have to try to make a story here. You have no excuse for that. Why am I going to
copy, paste, and print out when I can just have it on my phone?
Because it's very obvious when you're reading off your phone. You're like, let's see. Oh, no, that one's not good.
There's a lot of facts. I'm going to keep it short. Anyways, continue.
Well, I don't care that they're copy and pasted. I care that they're not curated already. Okay.
I don't think I could read all of these and curate them. Hold on. I need to show you guys how long this list... This is the top of the list.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I'm going to do about 5 from the top and call it quits.
Okay.
I will say, having looked at IMDb, what they decide are facts and what they decide are quotes is very generous.
Yeah.
It's fan voted. It's fine. But this does have some really good facts, actually. I did read a good chunk of them.
So, in the year 2002, which is when Coraline the book came out, Coraline Jones recently moved from Pontiac, Michigan with her family to Pink Palace Apartments in Ashland, Oregon. Her parents write write a gardening book and are very stressed. They're very hardworking. They don't really have time to make sure Coraline's having fun or entertain her. It's implied they're a little strapped for cash. Meanwhile, Coraline is just bummed that she had to move. She left a couple of friends behind. There's nothing to do here. She's joining a boring private school that makes her wear a uniform. And she finds there's a well that supposedly goes really deep. I don't remember the significance of it. But while there, she meets Wyborn, as in YB Born. Love it. Also called YB. It's a really fucked up name for a kid. Oh, you know what? Actually seeing it written out, it's possible that YB Born was a joke.
It was a joke.
I thought that they literally named him YB Born. And tell me that's not Neil Gaiman's like sense of humor,
it's
though.
extremely Neil Gaiman sense of humor. It also really sets the scene well for like their relationship between Coraline and Wybie that she just immediately starts insulting him.
Yeah.
She's like, why were you born, idiot? Get away from me.
Actually, I say it's Neil Gaiman's humor, but fun fact, he was not in the book.
I was going to say he wasn't in the book.
Yeah, he was, Coraline talked to herself a lot, apparently. I'm going to read the book after this, because that seems...
Honestly, I want to, too. Like,
Same.
Yeah, anyways.
So, she meets Wybie, who is the landlady's grandson, and a stray black cat who just kind of be chillin'. She goes home and is bored, and her parents are too busy writing, so they tell her just explore the house. And she finds this weird little door. It's been covered in wallpaper, and it's locked. And her mother agrees to unlock it if she'll leave her alone. She unlocks it, it just leads to a brick wall. There's nothing there. She's like, okay, lame. Later, Wybie gives her a button-eyed doll that looks exactly like her that he found in his grandmother's trunk. And he's like, this is pretty cool. I thought you'd like it. It looks just like you. And she's like, I'm too old for dolls. But yeah, this is actually the coolest thing ever. Which is super relatable. So she pulls up a chair for it at dinner is the funniest part. Too old for dolls. And then I think they put out a plate for her. So, that night, Coraline. So, that night, oh yeah, by the way, I should mention, everyone's calling her Caroline. She's like, it's not Caroline, it's Coraline. So, that night, a mouse leads Coraline to the door, which is now no longer bricked up. It is now an opening to an parallel universe called the Other World. And Coraline meets her other mother and her other father, who are identical in every way, except they have buttons for eyes, and their personalities are quite different. Her real father always cooks, and he's not a good cook, but in this world, her other mother cooks, and she's a fantastic cook. Her other father is very attentive, and he gives her stuff. So she has a lot of fun, and when she goes to bed, she comes home, and she's back in her real bed. She meets a couple of the neighbors, and they all more or less give her the same warning, which is, you're in danger, don't do whatever you're thinking of doing. And she just simply ignores it. And she returns to the other world twice more. At one point, her other mother creates Wybie, other Wybie, except he can't talk. Because she's like, didn't you wish your friend couldn't talk? And she's like, yeah. And then immediately it becomes very lonely all of a sudden with just one character talking to herself. So each time she's spoiled by her other mother and her other father. And they tell her, you can stay here permanently if you let us replace your eyes with these buttons. And Coraline is just horrified. So she tries to escape. But her other mother imprisons her in a room behind the mirror. It's like this, I don't even know how to describe it. There's no door. It's like phases her through the wall and she's there.
Yeah.
And also, I didn't capture it well, but she gets in a whole argument with her mother. Tensions are rising and her mother grows 7 feet tall.
The other mother,
thank you. Her arms stretch out. She becomes a terrifying creature.
There's a lot of spider imagery in the entire house in the other, and especially with the mom. And that's kind of the first time you see it is when she does her weird transformation.
It all kind of connects.
Well, you see it right from the beginning when you see spider webs on her sewing machine and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because now that I pick up on it, even her hands in her true form are meant to look like a spider.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Spider legs.
Also, all of the furniture and everything are bugs.
In her room.
Yeah.
In the mom's room. It's just
it's
the bug
cool.
room, which I remember when I watched it for the first time as a kid, I had to pause the movie. Not a bug fan.
It's just
had to take a moment.
Bugs get caught in the web. It's good symmetry. Anyways.
Oh, before I forget, the cat, when she visits the other realm, the cat can speak. And he appears to be this kind of otherworldly being that, and this tracks for cats, can slip between the dimensions. and is just not really beholden to any rules. And he warns her that she's in danger, that this mother is not like any mother he knows. And I think he implies she wants to eat him, but Coraline doesn't take it seriously. Anyway, she's now trapped in the room behind the mirror, and while there, she sees the ghosts of all the past victims of the mother, which is, I don't think I mentioned it, but the house that they're staying at wasn't rented to children, anyone with children, because throughout the years, kids would just disappear there. Most notably, YB's great aunt, his grandmother's sister, she disappeared as a kid. And Coraline's the first time that they've rented a house to a kid, to someone with a kid again. So these are all the past victims, and they tell Coraline that the other mother, whom they call Beldam, would use the ragdolls of them to lure them into the other world. And then once they accepted the offer of having buttons sewed over their eyes, she stole their souls and would feed off of their flesh to stay alive. And the only way they can escape is by returning their eyes, which are hidden throughout the other world. So other YB rescues Coraline and takes her home. She successfully locks the door, but that's when she discovers that her parents have been kidnapped and are now stored in the other realm. And she talks to real YB. YB doesn't believe her. As Val pointed out, he probably thought she was just full-on schizophrenic because she was like just disorganized, like there's things in the walls. Eventually, I did like how they handled this. She returned kind of because she felt like there was no choice. It didn't feel like there was that horror, like don't go back in, you got out. It really did feel like she had to do this.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, her parents were gone.
Mm-hmm. So she goes back in, and the other mother, or the Beldam, swallows the key, so now everyone's trapped in there, presumably forever, but until she agrees to have her eyes replaced with buttons, she's not in immediate danger. And Coraline speaks to the cat, and the cat gives her some advice, which is that she's very fond of games. And so Coraline suggests a finding game where she'll look for the eyes, and if she can find them and her parents, she'll go free. And otherwise, she'll agree to have her eyes turned into buttons. So she goes around and finds the souls. Every time she finds a soul, more parts of the other world kind of turn to dust and become weaker and gray and lifeless. Eventually, she finds the Beldam in its arachnid form, where it's just a full-on spider at this point with like a cracked porcelain face. And Coraline's talking to the Beldam, and the ghosts warn her, even if you find your parents, because she's at this point found all the eyes, they go, even if you find your parents, she's going to keep you here. You have to trick her. So she says, my parents are right behind the door you locked. And she's like, no, they're not, idiot. So she vomits up the key, unlocks it. And at this point, the cat's kind of just chilling with her at this point. And in a very relatable moment, she couldn't think of anything to do. So she puts the cat onto the Beldam. And in the commotion, it claws out her eyes. And so Coraline's able to find her parents, who are trapped in the snow globe that they brought with them from Pontiac. And with the thing blinded, it turns the other realm into its spider web. Coraline is able to crawl away and lock the door behind her. And seemingly all is well. Her parents return. They have no memory of the event. And so she just is like, okay, fine. And she returns the eyes to the kids by sleeping. And the kids are like, thank you, you saved us. But it's not over, because you have the key and she will never stop trying to get the key. So she goes to just full on just throw it in the well. But the severed hand, which is now I didn't mention it, like, she shut the door on the beldam's hand and it separated. Now the hand's like this spider, and it's dragging her back to the door when Wybie shows up, and the two of them manage to kill the hand, and they toss everything into the well. So seemingly everything's okay, and it ends with her apologizing to the cat for throwing it at the beldam, and they have a little cookout with all the neighbors, and she goes to explain to Wybie's grandmother exactly what happened.
It's a very cute ending until you realize she's like, hey, I saw the ghost of your dead sister, and what you thought happened to her was way worse.
Yeah.
Hey, it was worse than you thought.
But
her
it's okay
eyes got
now.
removed.
Yeah. And then some other stuff that kind of got lost that wasn't notable enough to point out is it was preying on Coraline and the other children because they were ungrateful, and even though they had like a loving family, they were spoiled, and it's like, oh, I could give you all these gifts. And I feel like that's important just because of the moral, which is one of my favorite parts of the movie. So, Ashley, why don't you tell us some fun facts?
All right, well, you already talked about the fact that Wybie's not a character in the book. The creators of the movie felt that they didn't want her talking to herself, so they gave her a friend of her own age. So there were 130 sets that were built across 52 stages at the studios, spanning 183,000 square feet. And the 52 different stages were the most ever developed in a stop-motion picture. The on-screen snow was made from superglue and baking soda. There were 24, although I saw later that there were 28 different puppets of Coraline used. Each took about 10 people to make and over 3 to 4 months to construct. Initially, it was going to be a live-action film, and Dakota Fanning was going to actually portray Coraline. But when they decided to make it stop motion, they still asked Fanning to play the voice, and she was really excited about it.
She was outstanding.
She did a really good job.
It was unbelievable how good she was.
When she first started, I was like, but then, like, as the movie got on, she got better at it and, like, more into it.
Especially because she's kind of low profile otherwise. I wasn't expecting this kind of performance.
Her sister is a lot bigger, Elle Fanning.
Now, was Elle Fanning the one from 50 Shades of Grey, or was that Dakota Fanning?
That's Dakota Johnson.
Okay. Well, you see my mistake. That was a reasonable mistake to make, though, right? It's an uncommon first name.
Going name on loan, you're right, but they don't look anything alike.
Yeah, well, face blind, so.
It's also an animated movie, so it's not like you see.
Yeah, that's right.
Point.
Fuck you, Ashley.
The Fannings are well known.
Apparently not.
Not to you. Anyways, the face on the dollar bill given to the movers is a picture of Henry Selick, the director. Oh, I didn't go over who's in the movie. Dakota Fanning plays Coraline, but there you go. So the band...
And Keith David's the cat. How could you not mention that?
Because I didn't know that.
Really?
Yeah.
It was like one of the first names they said. I was looking forward to hearing Keith David the entire movie. It was like I was listening when Wybie was talking. I was like... Either he's putting on the performance of a lifetime or this isn't Keith David.
God. John Hodgman is the dad, which only matters to me, a person that listens to a lot of like podcasts on the same network that he's on. So I hear his name approximately 3 times a week.
I love it. Jennifer Saunders and Dawn French were Mrs. Spink and Miss Forcible. And actually, they were cast to play the opposite character they voiced. But the director didn't like it, so he was like, switch characters. So when you look at them physically, or at the time, they matched kind of the opposite sister they were playing because they kind of based them off the original actors.
I was gonna say, they're personality-wise, they're very similar.
Yeah.
But
Spink and Forcible.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, the leaves. So you know when Coraline is returning to the well, and the leaves kind of pop up on the trees and they're really pretty. This popcorn painted pink.
Huh.
And then they cut it into little pieces for the ones that were falling down. I thought that was
cute.
so cool. The band, They Might Be Giants, wrote 10 songs for the movie. It was originally going to be a musical. And then they decided to take a darker production. So they cut all of them but 2, which includes the father song that he sings on the other father song. And then the song in the end credits. but the band decided to just keep the songs they wrote and release them as regular songs and use them for other projects, which was pretty cool.
Most good soundtracks should be able to be released on their own.
Honestly.
Yeah. Also, the lead singer of They Might Be Giants is the singing voice for the other father.
Yes,
because the judge,
I did know
John
that.
Hodgman does not sing like that.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. What else? A crew member was hired specifically to knit miniature sweaters and clothing for the puppets, and they had to
dream
use
job?
Yes. They had to use needles so small they were like almost the size of like a human hair. Like they were so tiny. This at the time was the longest stop motion film until Kubo and the Two Strings, which came out in 2016. Also made by Lianka.
Which is the studio.
Yes.
Laika. Yeah.
Laika. Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I just pronounced all the vowels. It's fine. This is the first stop motion animated feature to be shot entirely in 3D. Neil Gaiman said that this is his favorite adaptation of his books.
Mm-hmm. What else has he had? I mean, Good Omens.
Good Omens came out much later.
Yeah.
I don't know if Coraline still holds the top rank because he did work very, very directly on Good Omens.
True. Well, just from critical response.
American Gods too, I think. But
Yeah,
that also may have
true.
come out later.
I'm gonna cap it off after this one because I think I'm done.
I read The Ocean at the End of the Lane, and I'm like...
I read that when I was like 12, but I was way too young to read
Yeah.
The Ocean at the End of the Lane.
Oh shit, he wrote Beowulf.
Surprise.
Somehow,
The original.
Somehow, oh my god, he played himself on The Big Bang Theory. Somehow,
I did know that.
Neil Gaiman is like both the biggest hack and the best writer I've ever known. Is like he writes the best and some real trash.
I have a fun Neil Gaiman fact, but I think I might have to share it
Off
the air because
Okay.
it does slightly slander him.
Okay. We'll probably cut it anyway, because I like Neil Gaiman. I don't want me to come off.
No,
as
me too.
slandering.
All right. The last thing is that when Neil Gaiman was trying to write Caroline, but he accidentally wrote Coraline, and he looked at it and said, "That's someone named, and I want to know who it is, and that's why what inspired him to write the novel."
See, this is what I mean when I say he's kind of a hack. He's an extremely talented writer. He writes some of the best stories ever, but he's also a little bit of a douchebag where he's like, "Tell me your story, typo." I'm like, come on.
I think that's why I like Good Omens so much, because he's really well balanced by Terry Pratchett.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, let's not take ourselves too seriously here. I'm going to write a footnote that is going to make no sense whatsoever, and you're all going to roll with it.
Oh, actually, all of the singing that's in the movie is gibberish. They don't say real words. People have tried to decipher it, but they've come out and said, no, it's gibberish. And actually, one of the singers in the choir that sings, their name was Coraline.
Neat.
No relation.
No relation.
All right, that's it. I'm calling it there. If you want to see the rest of the 5 pages of facts on IMDb, that's on you.
Or watch Coraline. Oh, one last one. Mr. Babinski, this blue gymnastic guy who wasn't mentioned because he wasn't very plot important, wears a medal, which is like it is. It's not inspired by it, is the Chernobyl Liquidator medal. And so there's some fan theories that like that's why he's blue or something.
Yes, it's service at the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, April 26, 1986. And it reads on the front, participation in the cleanup campaign. And the medal's unique because it's the only medal awarded for participation in a nuclear cleanup.
Mm-hmm.
But it also explains why his complexion is a little odd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's get it to the good.
All right. The good. Dun, dun, dun. So Ashley and I have been talking borderline nonstop for about 30 minutes at this point. So I'd love to hear from Nika.
Absolutely. I will also start with, because we talked about this before recording, for a note, I didn't think about this when I was suggesting this movie. I am a psychology researcher. As of like the last 4 years, my research has focused on adverse childhood experiences and childhood neglect, which I feel like is maybe important to mention since we're talking about Coraline, a movie about childhood neglect, effectively. Yeah. I love this movie so much. I rewatched it. I was like, man, This is great. I think a lot of it's just that I love Leica. That was like my first good, is just all of their detail work
Incredible.
is astounding. I know Ashley talked about a lot of it in the facts, but just like everything in the sets, everything in the character design, the music, they pour their souls into all the films they make. I think it's very, very clear.
I think that's why stop motion was probably such a great choice for this, is because that requires such attention to detail. So they could shine there.
Absolutely. I think even in just the opening sequence, which we didn't really talk about, but it is of, if you watch it blind, it is just of a doll being kind of having everything removed and then recreated. And at the end, you see it's the Coraline doll that becomes fairly plot relevant. All the detail of like the movement of the thread and the stuffing was both just absolutely incredible when you remember that it is stop motion and someone is like manually moving each of these pieces, and also made my skin crawl.
Yeah.
Very
also, the fact
effective
that they
setting.
did that just for an opening scene is incredible as well. And yeah, this movie, the attention to detail is insane. Like the sisters, the neighbor sisters, that like their faces are just old and like wrinkly, but like in the most perfect way, and one of them has like the cutest dimples, and it just looks incredible. But then also they have dogs, and you can see each individual hair on the dog, and same with the cat. Like the level of detail is immaculate.
I don't remember the exact scene, but there was one moment where like it must have been the cat was like scared or something, and the fur rippled like all the way down its body. It was a very, very cool shot.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I think about that too with the dogs in the other world when they visit their other versions of the neighbors, and they are just surrounded by these dogs. And each one not only is like, as Ashley said, again, just like you can see all the fur and everything and all the detail. They're all different.
Yeah.
You can kind of tell them apart.
They have personalities too. The fact that they put personalities into puppet dolls is incredible. And they're all barking at different times. Like, and there had to be like 50 of them just in this theater in the other world. It was insane.
It's far from my favorite part, but I did really like that the taxidermy dogs, because it really was a great microcosm of the movie. It's this normal thing. It kind of makes more sense to taxidermy your dogs than to just bury them and move on, but it still is super weird. And that's this whole movie, is this combination of funny and serious, normal and weird. Like Whitey's just a normal kid, but he rides his bike around, and this guy's like his welding
full mask on.
Yeah, it's like that's the whole movie. Is he finds a doll that looks like her, the normal thing, and then there's this whole other realm because of it.
It's pretty cool.
I do have to say though, my favorite part of this movie is the quote unquote moral of it, where if you're not grateful for your family, it will be taken away. It's very Grimm's fairy tales, very, very old-timey European.
Be grateful for it,
story,
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
I really loved the plot because it had just such a, like, I felt like it flowed really nicely and it was easy to follow, but like in a very straightforward without being straightforward. Like it had a sense of whimsy to it, but it was like, oh, okay, like cause and effect. Like there's no moment of being like, wait, what's happening? Everything is fully clear and explained without being obnoxious, like over explaining things as well. Like, oh, hey, the twins are putting on a show for you. And it was like just so simple that we knew she was going there and that was it. Like, I just really liked the way that they kept the plot simple so that they could do a lot with like the design and the everything else and the moral and the vibes. It was all there. I loved it.
I agree. I think the other thing I really like that ties into that is like the foreshadowing that they managed to put into it.
Yeah.
I noticed that really early when Coraline's real mom gets her the key to the hidden door. the key is a button, which I think is incredible. You wouldn't, I mean, I feel like at this point, if you're watching Coraline for the first time, you have an idea of what the movie's about, but that still is like a really nice little detail. It doesn't feel chilling until the end when she's just scrambling for that key, and it's just a reminder of what the other world actually is.
Yeah.
And
Plus, like from the movie posters and everything, even the book cover, we knew that buttons played a role.
Right.
So it just like the real significance of it wasn't clear, and I quite liked that.
Yeah. I also really liked that it had like a skeleton key design. I thought that was interesting. In a drawer full of regular keys, the button makes it stand out, but it also stands out because it looks old and stuff like that, which also tells us too, like, even though we saw 3 ghosts, like what is it called? The other mother has Beldam. They've been there for a long time. Like, so I thought that was pretty cool too.
Part of what I like about that is the cat really helps establish how long she's been there, because he acts as like a guide, very similar to Greek myths of 2 ancient beings fighting.
Yeah.
As he guides Coraline, he gives her advice, he even like cheats a little bit and gives her some tangible help. And it really draws upon like borderline religious, where these good and evil powers fighting using man as a go-between. The choice for the cat, the guide to be a cat, is outstanding, because all cats are basically just like that. Olive especially.
I honestly, if Olive was, I would not be surprised if Olive was my guide in another world.
Oh yeah, my roommate's cat, we've all agreed is just deeply, deeply haunted.
Yeah. we used to think Olive had feline schizophrenia, because she would just like, just absolutely lose it at like nothing, and we're like, it's hard to tell, because that's part of just what being a cat is.
Yeah, Nokia's the same way. Her big thing is that she's learned to Tokyo drift now.
Nice.
Except she scares herself every time she does it. So she'll Tokyo drift across our kitchen and then go and hide under the bed for 2 hours. Just afraid of her power. Too much fun
for one day.
Another piece of foreshadowing I really liked. It was a really minor detail. But after the first day that Coraline goes into the other world, she goes to the door and it's been sealed shut. And she asks her mom, and she says, "Oh, I found rat droppings, so I closed it." It seems like it was letting in rats. And that's kind of dropped for a little bit. The next time she manages to go through, the jumping mice, which are like the alternate Mr. Bobinski's like circus, the cat kills one of them and it turns into a rat, which I thought was a really interesting, like, both the things are not as they seem, and just that the rat it was a rat. Because she goes, "No, it's a jumping mouse." And her mom's like, "Okay, well, it was shitting in our house. I closed the door." Yeah. And then when she actually finds it, she's like, "Nope, that was actually straight up rats."
Yeah. That was messed up when the cat like killed the rat.
It did a couple
screen.
times.
Yeah.
It ripped off its head at one point.
Yeah.
Messed up.
I really liked Coraline as a character, specifically her age, because she's kind of at a point where, like, her parents leave her alone, and she's, like, just barely old enough to do that, but she's still young enough that, like, she kind of has this whimsical sense to her. Like, she picks up a stick and is looking for water, like, with a dowsing rod, and, you know, things like that, where it's like, she still has an imagination, so, like, her telling her parents, like, this wild dream she had, they're like, "Yeah, you're a kid," like, kind of dismissing it, but, like, it's believable that at her age she would tell stories like that, and I really liked that kind of, that aspect to her character, that she wasn't too old to be dismissive of it, but she wasn't too young to also be dismissive of it.
Absolutely. Coraline's characterization, I think, is just one of my favorite. There's a part also just later in the movie when she finds out her parents are gone. When she goes to sleep that night, it's the most, like, again, like, she's 11, I think.
Okay.
She makes pillow versions of her parents.
Oh my gosh, heartbreaking.
It's the most, like, you know, yeah, you're old enough to be home alone a little bit, but you're still a kid.
Yeah.
And that's the most, like, I think especially, you know, going into the psychology of it, like, she's feeling really neglected. and she just like, you know, she might like not like her parents in that moment. As soon as they're gone, she's like, oh, I need them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if they're busy.
Right.
And they clearly love her. They're just busy.
Mhm.
So as soon as they're gone, she's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I liked her a lot because she was shown to be a brat at times, but it wasn't like a lot of kids' characters where I'm like, it's such an obnoxious trait that I can't like them until they get over it. She was a pretty likable character even as a brat, and so I quite enjoyed.
She was, I think part of that was like we understood where she was coming from.
Mhm.
She wasn't being a brat to be a brat. She wanted some attention because she just moved there and had like, what, no toys, no friends? Like,
She had a stick.
exactly.
Creepy doll stick,
Yeah.
all you need.
She had no hoop to hit the stick with, though.
Because she's like an old-timey German girl.
No ball and cup.
No, I found that her being a brat was not annoying as well, and I like that.
She has a hell of an arm. I thought that as soon as she threw the rock at like where she heard the cat, and she like pinpointed it, it was a decent distance too. She's gonna be like the first female quarterback. She's on another level.
In the picture she has of her friends, they both have hockey sticks. She's
Yeah.
from Michigan. I would not be surprised if she was on that Pee Wee hockey team.
Oh,
She's
for
like,
sure.
I'm just full slap shotting this cat at the bell down.
The mom, the other mother, has an unbelievable dump truck. It puts Pixar to shame.
I don't know. Have you seen
Why?
Mrs. Incredible?
You're right. it was, I mean, I think it was actually supposed to be drawing upon, like, the anatomy of a spider.
It was.
Is a thorax and long, skinny limbs. But while she was still looking normal, I was like, this is distracting.
I also think part of it, though, actually was her clothing that was supposed to look more like a bustle than a rear end. Which we now know that bustles do in fact work, friends.
I don't know what the fuck a bustle is.
It's butt padding.
Okay.
Extra ass.
Right.
I did have another real point on the good, but I don't know if I can follow.
Oh, I have
The other mother's
going.
absolute dump truck.
Yeah. That chat probably should have waited, but the mice warning was really spooky because, like, now for a while it was just kind of noise. Everyone's like, be careful. It's dangerous out here. But the mice telling her to be careful, once again, is just kind of something we ignored. But then they're like, don't listen to them. They're calling you Coraline. That's not a name.
That was eerie.
Yeah.
That was so good. That's when you started believing the mice.
Mm-hmm.
Which is strange because at the same time they were also leading her to the door every night.
Well, the other
At
mice
least.
were.
That's
other mice,
true.
yeah.
Yeah. We never see
The real mice. No.
Levinsky's mice.
Which is interesting. I wonder if he actually was working with the other mice.
I have a feeling he just has like a closet full of field mice upstairs in his apartment.
Yeah.
feels pretty par for the course for that man.
For sure. Also, I loved him. I loved all of the neighbors. I feel like she was very dismissive of them as people, but
Yeah.
they were so interesting. If I was Coraline, I just would have been at the sister's house every day playing cards and eating the terrible candy, looking at the
Both-
dog angels.
Both of them were fascinating. I don't know why she's complaining.
Spink and Forcible, I think there's like some fan theories because they're very clearly like retired burlesque dancers.
Right.
You walk in, like she walks into their apartment and it is just postered with their old show posters when they were like young and not thin, but very thin waisted.
Yeah.
That's the only part of their body that was thin. But there's a lot of fan theories because they are, two bachelorettes that live in the same apartment that they are either married or together, which I'm like, I love these old lesbians.
Honestly,
I have that in my notes. Just, I love these lesbian burlesque dancers.
when I was in high school, I thought they were a lesbian couple for sure. I was like, oh, that makes sense. I didn't even question it.
I didn't pick up on it just because I very much picked up on a lot of jealousy between them. what I assumed would be like they each wanted each other's roles in their shows, and I just didn't see that blossoming into romance, but what do I know?
I think it was just the like old married couple argument when they were like reading her tea leaves.
That's what I saw, yeah.
I see a hand. I see a giraffe. You're stupid.
Yeah. You can't see anything.
I really loved them. Also, my favorite moment of the whole movie is when the taller one just boob checks the other one while she's sitting and she completely falls over. I was like, goals. I literally wrote it down. I don't write down much, but like that was a...
Absolutely incredible. I adore Babinski so much. Yeah. He does suffer from the common American problem of having an American person try to read Russian.
Yeah.
It's unintelligible, but I love him.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a silly little guy.
I kind of like that it's unintelligible though, because also the rest of the movie is unintelligible.
Exactly.
It kind of works.
Exactly.
If it's his character, yeah.
Yeah. I loved him as a character. When he falls down and Coraline's got the little shoes over her head.
That was so funny.
Oh. The other thing I liked was there was like little bits of humor that didn't overshadow the spookiness of it that I thought were perfect.
So it didn't make it into the plot, but what Ashley's describing is one scene where Babinski's on the like roof or something.
He's on his porch.
And he's like, Coraline! And he jumps on top of her and she like flinches with a pair of garden shears over her head and she doesn't get hit and she looks up and he's full on like straddling over her with the garden shears like an inch away from his crotch and he just does not seem bothered by it. Just all a part of his plan.
I also really love the look of him too. Very round midsection with the lankiest, thinnest limbs.
The Gollum body. I love it.
It just suits him so well, and it is so funny.
I think there's a note at the end where her mom is like, no, we're not going to invite him. He's an alcoholic. And she's like, no, he's just weird.
Yeah. She specifically
he's
says,
sober,
calls
just
him
weird.
a drunk.
Yeah.
And she's like, he's not a drunk, Mom. like imagine your 11-year-old being like, no, he's not an alcoholic.
And then at the end, they find him digging up roses and planting beets there.
He does offer Coraline a beet the first time. She just throws one at her.
It was a gross-looking beet, though, to be fair. If that was fresh, I would have
not
rooted
washed,
for her to eat it.
just fresh out of the ground, baby.
Yeah. He also was eating a beet as an apple.
It'll make you strong.
That's what they make you do in the motherland.
I gotta say, what really fucks with me are leaks. I don't get how they can be that dirty. Like, I
was really wondering where you were going with that.
Well, while we're talking about lesser eaten vegetables,
leeks are surprisingly dirty.
You have to wash the individual layers.
Yeah, you really need to get in there.
I'd rather simply not eat leeks.
Oh, but potato leek soup is so good.
Agreed. Strongly agreed.
I haven't had it.
This is finally where I can voice my opinion on cabbage. if we're on
Cabbage?
this, cabbage sucks.
No,
cabbage sucks. I'm sorry.
How could you say that? I love cabbage.
I don't think I've had enough cabbage to have an opinion on it.
I don't really like lettuce, so I was recommended to have cabbage. It lasts longer in the fridge, and it's pretty good. I don't like cooked cabbage. Cooked cabbage is different, but just raw cabbage, like coleslaw, cabbage.
Coleslaw is an exception.
Coleslaw is mostly mayo.
Yeah.
Well, everyone likes coleslaw.
The way I make coleslaw, it is mostly cabbage.
All right. It sounds like you're just making a salad with a shitty ranch dressing then. is a deconstructed coleslaw is just a shitty salad.
All right, I'll give that to you. You're not wrong. All right, let's get back to this movie.
All right. I only have 2 things left.
Okay.
So, first of all, the cat had the most relatable cat moment ever when it woke her up. It just pawed at her face for a while, and she opened her eyes. And when she opened them, it was just staring like an inch from her face, purring. That's just every day as a cat owner. Olive has figured out that the best way to wake me up is to simply sit on me and then just breathe at me until I wake up.
I wish Nokia figured that out. I think I've complained about this to Carter. When I was watching her for a week, her preferred method of waking me up was to stand at the foot of my bed, hair tie in mouth, and scream as loud as she possibly could until I startled awake. I have hypervigilance, and that was a bad time.
Ian and Holly's cat. No, is it someone's cat that I know will throw themselves at the door to get the owners awake. I think Newt whines, but Nina's cat used to throw himself against the door. She got him she got him his own cat. Now he's not as bad, but
that's lucky because generally cats are not fixed by introducing another cat into the mix.
I also think she got timed feeders, so they just feed themselves.
See, I could never do a timed feeder because at that point, they're fully self-sufficient. They don't rely on you. They don't need anything. You anymore.
Yeah. Only for breakfast. The time feeder is only for breakfast.
Easy solution. I think the last thing, or I have two things as well. The soundtrack is fantastic. It cuts between this like very whimsical, almost creepy but whimsical music that's the like girl singing in a nonsensical language, and that's like as Coraline's exploring the house and walking around and, you know, trying to find the well, and then it just cuts to like creepy string quartet as she's like getting into the horror of it. I think it does a really good job building tension.
It truly sets the mood. I loved it. One of the things that I have, which I forgot to mention earlier in the details, but the transitions between scenes were flawless. There was one specifically where she's at the dinner table and she leans back in her chair and then she falls into bed. And I really liked that, but I thought overall the transitions were really good too. Whether she was actually moving to get to a different scene or if it cut, seamless. That's all I have.
I got one last thing, which is just that when the cat was talking to Coraline about the other mother, and he says that she could be looking for something to love, something that isn't her, something to eat. Especially for kids, it set up pick your favorite, scariest explanation. Is kids could see a possessive, needy parent in that, or they could see a creature that's taking them away from their family. So it really just fit whatever spoke to the kids as the scariest.
Yeah. And my last good thing was another just like little detail piece. Again, just going to how good Laika is as an animation studio. In the kind of final altercation with the Beldam, when she's in the spider's web, it has spider's web physics. When she hits some of the like support threads, it reverbs because the other mother doesn't have her eyes and she is tracking her using the vibrations through the spider's web, and they animated all of it and scored it. It's in the soundtrack. When she is like trying to run away, there's like this jump, this like weird twang, and it's when she hits the thread. It's so interesting.
That's really cool. That's how real spiders find their prey.
That's so cool.
All those eyes, they still use vibrations.
And they can't use them?
Water everywhere.
Alright, let's move on to the bad.
The bad.
I didn't have much.
Yeah, for one of the first times, I think the only other time I've had fewer bad than good was in like Scooby-Doo Zombie Island and
or Nope.
Nope, yeah. The few really good movies. Even in movies I love, usually I have more to complain about.
There's just, even if you don't like this movie, there's just so much to appreciate that it's like, there's nothing to say here. But yeah, I really don't have much. Anyone want to kick us off?
Sure. I think it was a little over foreshadowed. Is everybody she talked to is you're in danger from this thing, don't do this thing.
That's fair.
The cat said it explicitly, as I was like, just the mice would have been enough. You didn't need to do this whole thing.
I agree. I think the mice would have been clean and concise. My thing, one of the few bads I had was the dog getting his wings early, and then they just leave them odd.
Yeah, it fits him.
Just take it off and put it away. Don't make him come to terms with potentially dying every day.
The dogs were shown to be like a little afraid of the taxidermied dogs. They're like, well, you can't beat the Reaper forever.
I was gonna say, I think I told Carter this beforehand. She opens the fridge at one point, and there's just bare tortillas on the shelf. Instantly on my bad list. That's gross. What? Disgusting.
Pretty awful, yeah.
Disgusting.
So it wasn't very important to the plot, so I don't think I mentioned it, but she at one point was given by Finkel and Pinkel, or whoever their names were, the burlesque ladies.
The sisters.
Yeah, so they gave her a stone with a hole in the middle that's good for finding things, and Coraline uses that to see the eyes of the kids to help her find it, because they're like hidden in plain sight. So the mother is shown to be like fighting to get it at all times. That was how Coraline knew it had significance, is the mother was trying to get it from her. And she's trying to get the last eye, and a mouse is running away with it, and she just fucking hucks the rock at it, and it misses because it's a tiny little mouse. And then she's like, oh no! I'm like, come on. Don't throw it.
I thought that was a cool piece of the movie because actually it was shaped almost, not quite, but almost like a planchette. And planchettes used to have like a circle in the middle with like a bit of glass, and people used to hold up the planchette to try and look for stuff, like see the other world. So I thought that was a good.
It was very similar to the Spiderwick Chronicles. They had
yeah.
That's just kind of long held beliefs, is that a stone with a hole in the middle is special.
Mm-hmm. It feels similar almost to the, like, at the very beginning when she has the dowsing rod.
Yeah,
she's looking
exactly.
for water. Like, they start early with the, like, ancient magic.
Yeah,
the
you're
lore.
Right. I was gonna say, I also, just over foreshadowing, it is a children's movie, so I feel like I can't knock it that hard.
Yeah.
Because it is, for kids, you kind of have to hit them over the head a little bit with the plot sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know why she didn't question being given an exact replica doll of her that had been in a trunk for like 60 years. She's like,
yeah,
sure, blue hair, yellow raincoat, super normal 11-year-old like vibe. Yeah, that makes sense. I'll take this. I won't question it at all.
Would have thrown me off.
She had blue hair and pronouns. That's not very common. Let the record show that they're laughing just quietly. I'm worried that editing this is going to be like 10 seconds of silence after that.
Carter needs to make sure that
Nika's
everyone knows that he got the credit for his joke.
Well, yeah. It's just otherwise that's going to come off as like the biggest flop joke ever.
Oh, God.
Another issue I had is Coraline just had absolutely no hustle. She's like, oh boy, better get to this eye, otherwise I'm gonna have my eyes replaced with buttons.
Yeah,
really taking her time.
For the climax of the movie, she really there was no stress in getting what she needed, and then everyone just kind of gives her what she needs.
Well, except the mouse, but then the cat helped out.
Mouse got it for her.
Yeah, I wish that the fight for each eye took a little bit longer, because, I mean, and again, children's movie, I think, I have to think back to watching this as a child. They were terrifying. Yeah. Watching it as an adult, I'm like, I could do 20 more seconds of her fighting the other father.
Yeah.
Before she gets this reward.
She runs
instantly
towards the other father for the eye, and he just falls through a bridge. She didn't do anything.
He got stuck. He was creepy. That was... I'm going to get to that in the spooky. And then other times, Coraline... And I don't think it outweighed her, pretty solid character. But she could be a very obnoxious kid. Like, Mr. Babinski ordered special cheese for his mice. And she's like, P.U. And I'm like, you're 11. There's no way this is the worst smell you've ever experienced.
She's also really mean to Wybie
Yeah.
for no reason.
Yeah.
Beyond he got really close to her with his bike.
It did look a little bit like he was trying to murder her the
Yeah.
first time they met.
It was a little spooky, but he's like, oh, hey, what's up? I'm Wybie. And she was like,
I should never have been born.
And then she like keeps up that joke every other time
Yeah.
that she sees him.
and she keeps calling him a stalker. And it's just like, what?
Yeah, he's like her neighbor.
Yeah.
He's like, cool, you're the only other child even remotely in my age group
Yeah.
within like a 5-mile radius of this house, and you hate me.
He's like, you've met everyone else. Tell me I'm not the most interesting person here.
I don't know about most interesting,
That's
but
fair.
probably like best equipped to like run around with weird doll and dowsing rod.
Yeah.
The other thing, too, is like the Otherworld Wybie was such like a, I'm gonna follow you into this house. I'm just gonna be here. It just, I don't know. I liked Wybie in the real world. I didn't like Wybie in the other world.
Yeah. I mean, that was supposed to be like
Yeah.
what she wanted versus what she
Right.
needed.
She learned her lesson that Wybie's actually pretty cool when he talks.
Yeah.
And having him not talk is not great, but yeah.
My last bad, and this is like again like fairly small, every time there's a note that's like left to her by her parent or by the other children or by Wybie, it voices it over as she's reading it with that character, and I hated it. No. No. Not a fan.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really like the other children all that much, to be honest, and just especially
Yeah.
hearing their voices be like, it's not over yet, Coraline. I'm like,
Yeah.
That part
I
was,
feel like there's a better way to deliver this information.
yeah,
Yeah.
that part was dumb. Also, the little boy calling her mistress instead of miss.
Yeah. Well, he was also saying like thou and thy, so
I guess.
it's implied he was really old. But I did actually really like that scene in which they said it wasn't over yet, because Coraline said, I'm just glad it's over, and they visibly got like confused and uncomfortable as like who's gonna tell her that she needs that we're all set. It's not over for you. And I just they conveyed a lot of nuance in that scene.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right, is that it for the bad?
That's it for my
That's it for
bad.
the bad.
Super short. All right, let's move on to the spooky.
The spooky.
I'll start.
Mhm.
I don't have a lot to say. The overall, the movie had the best spooky vibes. Like, I will say this, but for me, the other mother's face when it was all cracked and she was in her spider form,
Mhm.
that was it. I also have something to circle back to for good when we're done.
The mother like growing and her limbs lengthening was terrifying as an adult.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I was, because it was your first time ever watching Coraline.
Yeah.
I was very excited to see because I think rewatching it doesn't have quite the same level of terror because you know it's coming.
Yeah.
The first time,
Yeah,
horrific.
it is. It's really
Terrifying. For me, and it's, I think, both in the good and the spooky, because it's less, like, straight up scary and more just deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
When she goes back through the door and her parents are gone.
Mhm.
That scene, because she's walking through the house calling for them and they're not there. The last time she saw them, her mom said, oh, I'm going to go get groceries because, bare tortillas on the fridge shelf. We have no food. And she sees the groceries, so she's like, oh, they must be outside. And she goes to like go for the bag and all the food has molded over and rotted.
Mhm.
And that's kind of when she realizes how alone she is
Mhm.
and how long they've been gone and how real the threat is. I thought that scene was both just a masterclass of like suspense in a children's movie
Mhm.
and also just really like kind of still upsetting as an adult to be like, oh God.
Yeah. Is that thing was totally capable of keeping them there forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Also, too, the other thing, when she's going back through the door the first time, and the door on the other side was getting closer to her, that was super spooky.
Yeah.
I had that in
just
my
remembered
spooky
that.
too.
Also, too, when she goes in, the tunnel is like inviting and cool and, blue and purple. But when she leaves, It is crusty, dusty, full of
Yeah.
spider webs, like brown. Like it's. I thought that was kind of spooky too.
The YB flag kind of freaked me out.
Yeah.
That was creepy
Yeah.
as hell. They killed other YB and like hung up his puppet corpse as a flag. That was freaky.
Coraline reacts. I don't think she reacts to it like nearly intensely enough
Yeah.
for,
You
hey,
can't
my
scare me.
friend is, she just goes, oh no, Wivy.
Yeah.
I'm like, girl, he's dead.
Yeah.
I mean, I think she like knew that other YB wasn't really real.
Yeah.
She is 11. No, but it was rough.
When the dad was like driving this grasshopper, I thought it was really creepy because he's like, I'm sorry, Coraline, I don't want to do this. And like, it just they didn't lean into the puppet symbolism, which I suppose I appreciated because that might be a little played out, but he definitely wasn't in control. And
He foreshadows that the first time she meets him too.
Really?
When he's playing the piano.
piano
she goes,
plays
oh,
him.
my real father can't play the piano. He goes, oh, neither can I. The piano plays me.
Yeah,
And
you're
these
right.
giant arms like start playing. And later when he tries to warn her, they like physically almost break his neck.
yeah.
Like turn him. And it's very clear he does not want to be here either.
Yeah.
I thought I liked that they didn't overdo it though. Like they did it just enough to be like,
Deeply unsettling.
yeah,
And that ties into what another really interesting part of this movie is that they narrowed down what was scary to a very specific point. It's like, oh, it's this other Alice in Wonderland style universe where people are acting creepy, and then it just very quickly becomes, no, the mother is acting creepy. And it became a very tangible fear.
I feel like the first time they really show that too is when she actually introduces other Wybie, because I actually wrote down what she said because I found it so chilling, where she goes, oh, I thought you'd like him more if he talked less, so I fixed him.
yeah.
Yeah.
It shows like she has control over the other worlds.
Yeah.
I don't know if Coraline really realizes it in the moment.
She definitely didn't, and she only realizes it when she walks too far that it goes white.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh, I get it now. I don't know if I really liked that scene. I thought it was kind of boring, I guess, when she's walking with the cat and they run out of space and then it circles back to the house. But
I thought what the cat was saying was enough to keep me interested, but
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I think it was a necessary bit of like plot fill for what the rules of this world are.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Which was actually my last spooky, is they do a really good job of setting the rules and then breaking them, which I think works really well, because I think like the other only real like horror adjacent moment I had was when after the night when she's told, you know, here are your buttons, you can stay here as long as you sew them on. She's like, I need to go to bed, like, because she knows every night before then, when she falls asleep in the other world, she wakes up in real life. That has
Right.
always been the rule. And she falls asleep in the other world, and she wakes up in the other world. They'd set that rule like very clearly just through the plot,
Yep.
and then they break it, and that's when she's like, "Oh God."
Yeah, that's when the horror sets in that this is not good. It was a very good moment of doing that. Is that it? Does anyone have anything else?
Actually, apparently I have more. Spiderweb scene was really creepy, especially because it was like very figurative throughout the movie, but then when she's literally turned into a spider and the whole dimension is now a spider web, it became a very literal predator, and I liked that a lot. And then lastly, she swallowed the key in order to prevent Coraline from escaping, and when Coraline's like, they're behind the door, prove it, she makes herself throw up the key. That was a little intense.
That's a good point.
But that's it for my...
I have one last one. When her real dad, puts dinner on her plate, it made me legitimately gag. It's just this gelatin nightmare. Very good Foley work. Very upsetting Foley work.
It was upsetting.
Bad.
Imagine chicken pot pie that you kind of let soak in a bowl of water for a while.
Honestly, that's really what it
with
was.
a lot more gelatin.
Yup. And it looked like just whole pieces of chard in there.
Yeah.
Great.
Eat your greens.
She was like, it's slimy. It looked slimy.
Yeah.
They did a great job of it. But,
Yeah.
ooh.
Just the noise, everything about that, just full body shiver.
Mm.
All right. Impressions.
So
what's first?
my overall thoughts is that I just fucking loved this movie. It was outstanding. There's no question to me that it was horror.
Yeah.
This is absolutely a horror movie.
I remain unpepper sprayed another day.
Yes.
I can stop staring down the can in the middle of the dining room table.
Yeah, I did lean over to just check because I was like, did I miss something?
No, it's just a can of Down East.
My impression is that this movie is great and that I was kidding myself when I said I didn't like it.
Yeah. It just is such great attention to detail. It's very creepy. It's a very adult horror movie.
Yeah.
That's just... It's like The Shining. It happens to follow a young girl. Like, this really isn't a kid's story.
No.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think my impression, and something that I think is going to keep changing the more I watch it with age, is I think every time I watch it, I get a different impression of her real parents. Because when I watched it as a kid, I was like, they're so, like, they don't care. They don't love her. I totally get it. And I'm like, nah, man, like, sometimes you're busy and tired and you love your kid, but you have so much going on.
Yeah.
And you just moved and you were in a car accident and you love her, but you need her to go, like,
Yeah.
entertain herself for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still frustrated with the parents, but, like, I do understand them a little
Absolutely.
bit.
I'm full on the
more.
parent side. It's like, they're like, oh, we're really busy. We just got to do this.
But it's
They get her the gift. They clearly know what she wants and are just not in a great position.
The gift at the end, when they're shopping for her clothes uniform, or her school uniform, Coraline wants to pick out this, like, very cute, the quirky pair of gloves, and her mom was
yeah.
like, no,
Yeah.
absolutely not. And then when she wakes up after her ordeal, they're on her pillow, which is it's a very cute, like, you know, that, like, unsaid apology of, like, we know that this is rough.
Yeah.
We are listening to you. It's just everything else, which I thought was really sweet.
Yeah, because once they got some money and, like, we're doing better, like, they did actually invest in their child. So I think they were just stressed.
Her mom, I believe, explicitly said, after we see how this meeting goes, maybe I'll get you the gloves.
Yeah.
So it really was like a fulfillment of the promise that we love you, we care about you. It's just really a tough time. Give us a break.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, especially for Coraline, too, she matures a little bit after she's experienced the indulgent parents to a point of, we are then going to ask you to do something you don't want to do. That specific kind of, like, it's a very eerie look into this cycle of effectively abuse, where they're giving her this, like, here, we're going to give you everything you want. We're going to make you comfortable.
They love bomb her.
Exactly. Now do something that's very, very scary and very upsetting. And when you say no, everything good is gone.
Yep.
That, like, again, from my research perspective, is upsetting to see in a children's movie, but also I think a really good perspective for kids to see that's not right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very true.
And then the last thing, mentioned it earlier, but I loved that this movie had a lot of Grimm's fairy tale kind of vibes of, like, appreciate your family or it'll be taken away.
Yeah.
It really helps make this creature feel very ancient.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, for the Ralph Bones Memorial Line highlight, it's a quote from Mr. Babinski. To thank Caroline for giving him the cheese, he goes, "Have beat, make you strong." The quotes were actually tricky in this movie.
Yeah.
Just because so much of it was, like, short sentences talking to each other. Very
Yeah.
little, like, just profound one-line statements.
The closest I got was a conversation between Coraline and her mom, where she's like, "Hey, Mom, I found a well today. Almost fell down it. Could have died." Her mom goes, "That's nice." Just walks away.
Yeah, the dialogue was very simple for like a rather complex movie.
Well, it was a kid's movie.
Yeah.
It kind of tends to be.
Yeah. All right. Who wants to give it a rating first?
I gave it 8 out of 10 Russian jumping mice.
Nice.
Very nice. I give it a 9 out of 10 Angel Dogs in Heaven.
I gave it a 10 out of 10 Stice concerts. I really liked it.
10 out of 10. Wow.
I loved Coraline. It was an awesome movie.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. Nika, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Do you have anything you want to plug?
No.
Okay.
First name only, I am disappearing
Yeah.
from the entirety of New England in 3 months and no one will ever see me again.
Thank you all for listening. If you liked it, make sure to give us a rating. Maybe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, give us a review. We do need it. It does help us. And also make sure to follow us on Instagram. Or if you want to send us a message or anything, send us an email at horrorsuckspodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on YouTube, where you can leave comments directly on the videos. And also check out our website, horrorsucks.com. And with that, thank you all for listening, and
Stay spooky.
Horror Sucks is brought to you by Wild Thing Media, editing and done by me, production done by Carter. I don't know.